Okay, we are at a point where we've got pretty much everything assembled we can. We're just winging the bed liner now. So I'm going to go over some final assembly details for somebody that might be doing a restoration type rebuild, or a stock rebuild. So it's very bright. It's maybe a little better. Okay, this is inside the front wheel well here. So this is a support tube that goes on here. I'm guessing they add that because people probably like to sit on the front corner of the fender for pictures or whatever and crush the fender down. I don't know why else you would need that support tube there. You've got this front splash guard right here. You can see it's held in with 4 push pins into the fender and then 2 into existing holes in the frame. The other side has the same thing. They are mirrored left-right. They are not left-right specific. They both have that extra hole. I don't know what it's for. It doesn't line up with anything, obviously. So maybe this fits a different model also. And then in the back of the wheel well, the front wheel well, you've got this close-off piece. It's the same piece left and right again. Underneath here, you've got this piece, which I believe is also the same piece left and right if you just flip it over. This has to be installed with, when you install the body. It goes around the body mount there. It goes above the fender, and then it goes below the wheel well. It's held in with 2 push pins. Now, we undercoated the fender under here. The factory, all it was is primer. There was no paint under here. So we figure the same 3M rubberized undercoat we used under the tub, we used under here. I think it took a total of 2 cans to do under the tub and inside these front wheel wells. I know there's some thin spots you can see, but it's far better than what the factory did, which was nothing. All these little bolts, they are 5/16. We clean them up, paint them silver. In the back here, this is your standard flare extension. So it's the short one. This gets held in by 2 bolts. And then where the 2 flare pieces come together, there's a metal plate. And it uses a push pin on the outside. They just fit how they fit. I tried moving them around and everything else. They just fit how they fit. You're dealing with old rubber that has probably shrunk a little bit over time. So in the back here, that metal plate, you can see at the top, it's actually bent out a little bit at the top. So it faces out away from the body, that bend. So on the front of the front of the extension for the flare, there's a rubber piece. That rubber piece goes between the metal inside here and this front flare. When we come around the other side, I'll show you this piece. So on the other side, I didn't have this metal plate because we only ended up with 1 good metal plate. So that right there is supposed to have a metal, that is the metal plate that goes in the center of the front fender flare. I found putting these flares on, if you put that center screw in first, and then tighten it up but leave it loose. Don't tighten it. Just put it on there just to hold the flare in place. It more or less aligns the flare to all the rest of the holes. I also found using squeeze clips works great too. Just cheap clamps from the dollar store to hold the flare on there while you're putting all the screws in. So just cheap squeeze clamps. You just stick them. Get my light. You just do that with them all the way around. Holds it in place. Just perfect for put these flares on. Makes it a lot easier. Now we go to the back of the vehicle. On the back of the vehicle, you can see those rubber liners. This one's marked R for right. We removed the rubber liners because we needed to heat up the riv nuts that were holding the roll bar on, so you need to pull the roll bar. Now, when you remove these, you've got a screw there. There's a screw in the middle behind the frame, and a screw there, and then a Phillips head screw under here. Now, you cannot get to this middle Phillips head screw to remove it or install it with the body on. So we removed these when the bodies were off, and there is no middle screw there now because we just recently reinstalled these and we can't get to it. Now on the back here, you've got two 10mm bolts, and then you've got these 3 body clips that have the center that you pull out, and then the body clip pops out. So this wraps underneath of here, and it closes off this whole rear section. You can see there's another clip another one of those center push pin clips right there. So this is to protect the this whole back section that's boxed out under here, and the corner of the tub from crap coming off of these wheels and getting up in there, chipping the paint, and then causing it to all rot out. Now, if you remember from an earlier video, we did have to cut open the box section under the body tub on both sides where these body mounts are. We cut a flap in each side so we could access the metal block that's in there that the bolt threads into. So we did not weld those shut because they pretty much were primed inside. I don't know if they were dipping these bodies at the time in a solution or what they were doing. So instead of welding and burning up that primer that was inside the box and all that, we just pushed the flaps back shut, and then we sealed them shut with this. This stuff's it's a little expensive for what it is, but you put something together with this, it is nearly impossible to get back apart. And if you buy the Cheese Whiz style can like this, when you're done, you leave a little bit sticking out of the top there, and that'll harden. You can pull that straight out, and the can will still work. So you're not losing, unlike a just a squeeze tube of RTV. Like one of these squeeze tubes where you open it and then you put the cap back on and you go to use it like a month later and the tube's no good. This, buying the can like this and leaving some excess out the top, allows the can to not go bad. That may be it for underneath. There's rubber caps on the ends of these studs on the gas tank straps. Let me pause. I'll put the vehicle down, and then we'll look under the hood. Okay, so here's a little side note. The Jeep that we rebuilt was a one-owner Jeep, so I got it from the original owner. He obviously did not do maintenance because it's a 1993 Jeep. This is the upper radiator hose. The only reason it's bad is it developed a hole right there where the squeeze clamp is. And this is the factory markings on this hose. The lower hose didn't have a marking like this. It was more or less just a white part number on there, and we already threw that hose out. But, you know, I guess this is good for, I guess, 20 or 30 years from now. Somebody's doing a concourse restoration or something crazy like that. That'll show you those are the markings that were on this hose. And this was a 1993 Jeep, and it's marked 1993 on the hose with I'm assuming that's like a yellow rubber stamp that stamped that on there, yellow paint. So let's go back to the Jeep. At this point, we're just waiting on the bed liner to get done so we can put the roll bar and the seats back in. I can get the rest of the soft top frame and the soft top swapped over. We did replace the rubber seal on the windshield frame. This is the cheapest one I could find on Amazon. I couldn't even tell you what brand it is or anything. It fit perfect. Had the holes in the right spots, everything. So it's just, you know, your foam rubber seal. It is a like exact fit though, so you do need to make sure you're centered left and right between those hinges before you tighten everything up. Alright, so under the hood, we'll start on this side. Here's your stickers. Unfortunately, this fender sat out in the sun for a long time by the looks of it, and when we pulled the painter's tape off, it kind of took the stickers with it and some of the printing, but those are your stickers and their location. Here's your complete jack assembly that had never been used. Took pictures of it, took it out, cleaned it up, painted it, put it all back in exactly how it came out. So if you need to know how the jack assembly goes, here's how the rods are and everything on the jack assembly. This is the correct battery hold down. It's rubberized. It has J-bolts. I'm not sure if the J-bolts are correct, but they do work. I know this is a marine battery. I didn't buy a blue battery because I wanted it to match the Jeep. It's just I was able to get this for next to nothing because the battery was technically expired and brand new on the shelf, and it works perfectly fine. Plus it has the studs on there, so the Jeep that we did had a winch on it. It just makes it easier if I decide to put the winch on this Jeep, I can run the cables right to those studs. So that makes it easier. The hinge was busted off on this fuse box cover. I'll get another one eventually from the junkyard, I'm sure. But for now, it's just, you know, put some Velcro strapping across it. That'll hold it on there so it doesn't blow off and keep it from rattling, because that's really annoying. Here's your power hookup for that. It goes on the bottom stud there on the fuse box. So now down inside here, there's bars. They're hard to see. They're even harder to get to. You see it from this side. So you've got, down underneath here, you've got 3 bars on the passenger side. 1 bar goes from the lower stud to the bottom of the battery tray. It supports the battery tray. The other bar coming off that lower stud goes to a hole near the outside of the fender there, right through the wheel well. It's nut and bolted through the wheel well. The bolt goes from the front to the back, so the nut is on the back side with the threads. And then you've got another support bar, goes to that upper stud. And when it gets to the bottom here, it faces down. So at one end it faces down, the other end it faces up. I do believe it does make a difference which way it goes to, which end goes to the fender and which end goes to the body. And yes, they're a pain in the ass to get to tighten all that up. And we can move across here. That hole, the big hole there, that's where your marker light on the fender, that's where the harness is. Just drop the fender. Oh my. Alright, let's try this again now. So, here's your ground for the headlight harness on this side. Screw was cleaned up, painted silver because it would have been natural originally. Here is your plug wires pushed into those actually plastic channels that they sit in. I don't know if you can see all of them. Here's how all this goes together. Here's your grounds again. And these 2 harnesses, they were held together with these fancy double zip ties, which I couldn't salvage, so they were held together with just a plain black zip tie now. But that's how all this goes together. If you've taken it apart and you can't figure out what plugs in where and what goes to what clips. And again, those are probably factory original heater hoses. One's got that cover on it. Here's all this. And how it's run down to the front rear. Clip to the frame. Now, your wiring harness runs through inside the grill and it clips the holes that are in the grill on the bottom. Come over to here, you've got your horn. Those colors are not correct in the wiring because I had to replace the pigtail. And this is just a universal pigtail that was the correct end. There's your other ground. Again, there's a hole in the fender here where the marker light goes through. And then you just follow the overflow tube and the wiring harness together right back to here. The wiring harness dips down between the washer bottle and then comes up and plugs into this right here. You've got your coolant bottle here. There's a clip here that's holding 3 brake lines together with a bracket. Now that's supposed to be bolted to that lower bolt on the coolant bottle, but because these are aftermarket brake lines, I couldn't really get it to reach. So for right now, it's just all clipped together and hanging loose. This hose here comes off the back of the air cleaner, goes down to your evap canister. The small tube above it goes across, and you see the same connector there. It's plugged in right there to manifold vacuum, next to where your booster hose is for your power booster for brakes. The third hose coming off of there goes down to a metal tube on the frame that runs back to your gas tank. So there's your computer screwed to the firewall. There's a lot of extra plugs on this because this is a bare bones stripped down vehicle. But here's how all your harness is routed, because we took everything directly off the other firewall and put it right on here. Now, these wheel wells, they were not really painted. The firewall wasn't really painted. The inside of the grill, none of that was really painted. It was basically primer with some overspray on it because the factory, I guess, figured none of that needed to be painted. Now, there's 2 of those tubes down in here again, but you're not going to be able to see them. They're going to be the same tubes that I showed on the other side, and they have to be hooked up before these bottles go in and before this bracket goes in. Now, if you need to remove this bracket, if you need to get to the computer, the washer bottle just pulls up out of this bracket with some finagling, but it pulls up out of the bracket. It's just, you can see where it just slides in right here. So once you have the bottle out, you unplug the hose from the bottom, you unplug the plug from the bottom, and you can remove the washer bottle. As soon as you take the washer hose off, which is right here, it's going to start pissing out the bottom of the bottle if you have liquid in the bottle. So just be aware of that. Have something to block it off with, or something to dump the washer fluid into. Now, once this bottle's off, there's a bolt at the bottom of this bracket that you only have to loosen. There's a bolt under this harness here that you only have to loosen. You have to remove this bolt and then the other 2 coolant tank bolts. Pull the coolant tank out of your way, and this metal bracket will just lift right up out of there. It gives you access to the charcoal canister, the computer, and the 2 support bars for the fender that are underneath of all this. So, and this also shows that you're sharing this bolt here between the washer bracket and the coolant bottle. Now this vehicle, there is no power steering. This is a manual steering vehicle. Again, this was like super cheapo. There is no frills on this. I don't think this even came with a back seat. There's no rear seat belts. There's no rear carpet. And it did not have a radio from the factory. Now when you do this lower hose, the factory hose had a metal spring inside it. You definitely want to pull that metal spring out and put it into the new hose. There's a reason they put it in there. To get it back in there, you may have to use a bunch of spray lube inside the hose and just push and twist the spring, and it'll basically screw its way into the new hose. So new hood bumpers here. They're just super cheap ones off Amazon. I think they were on sale for $1.50 a piece with free shipping. They're Omix ADA ones. You've got your rubber bumpers on the side. You've got your rubber hood bumpers here. We ordered new hood latches. They just have not come yet. Here's your decal for under the hood. I'm trying to get close here so you can see what it says. You can always pause the video. So, like I said, this should show a bunch of details that if somebody's trying to put a Jeep back together, it's details that you're going to want to know. I mean, this is a 4-cylinder. The 6-cylinder, a lot of this is probably very similar. There's your throttle cable. It goes through the rear clip on this mounting clip on top of your valve cover. So hopefully somebody finds this helpful.